Well, good afternoon, everybody. Hope y'all are doing good. I'm lining up seeds for the garden. We got loofah and sweet peppers. I like a lot of hot peppers, so I've got a few packages of hot peppers to make salsa with. I also got a lot of flowers, flower seeds. So why in the world am I doing a video today? What am we doing a video about? Well, you know what's funny is when you're planting out a garden, a lot of parts to planting out a garden, right? Not everything is how do you say, like, not everything is the seed, not everything is the dirt or the water. Sometimes it's just the structure that the seeds have their start in. Well, what in the world has that got to do with anything? Like, why in the world would I talk about this stuff in what you've come to expect from some sort of ministerial video? Well, you know, in chapter 12 of 1 Corinthians, it talks about the body and how every part of the body plays a role, and that every part of the body matters. You know, not every part of the body is an eye, not every part of the body is a foot or a hand or whatever, you know. And I guess part of that concept is that it seems as if some parts of the body receive more honor than other parts of the body. In fact, my son's girlfriend, her name's Heather. You know, she and I were talking at her house, and we were having a discussion about ministers in the Bible and this concept of what do you need to be saved? And I know in this modern era we have grown a concept of those are really good. Grown a concept that we don't need anyone but ourselves, and to do it. And so I would ask, you know, people that believe that, this thing here, what does it take to be alive? You know what I mean by that? What, you know, if my whole body was skin or bones or gray matter or eyes, I wouldn't be alive. I'd be dead. I'd be one big giant eyeball, but I'd be dead. In fact, we see it oftentimes when a baby is born with a serious birth defect. that highlights one part of their existence and diminishes others, we'd say that was defective. They have a birth defect. Now, that doesn't make them any less valuable. It just means they're not normal. And so I challenge people. They say, well, I don't need a minister to be saved. I don't even need to believe in the Bible to be saved. All I need to do is just, God deals with me directly, and I kind of base my existence off how I feel. And with something as important as salvation, because, legitimately, if you're a professing Christian, you have a belief that, one day we're going to stand before God, and, we want to stand before God having been forgiven by God for mistakes that we've made, and we definitely want to identify with God so that his sacrifice on the cross has been applied to our life. And so kind of seems like I'm rambling, but I'm getting to a point. And it wasn't the first time I've heard this, but I have said in the past, I felt like I was called by God to minister, and that what I do as a minister is very important to the kingdom of God. In fact, I would question, arguably so. I mean, I suppose we could all sit down and have a conversation about whether you can be saved without a minister or whether you can. I do believe that the Bible says that you can't. And I know that kind of flies in the face of many ministers today. A lot of people today, they don't like being told that they have to have someone or they have to rely on someone. But what's funny is the only reason we feel that way when it comes to God, we don't feel that way about other things. Like, we don't mind being dependent on the electric company to bring electric to our house, which means all those men and women out there string electrical lines, and when the power goes out in a storm, you don't mind depending on them to make sure that they get that electrical grid up and going. We don't go out there and try and do that ourselves, right? We kind of wait around in our dark houses until they get the power restored, and then we kind of do a little happy jig because they did their job, and we now have power back in our house. But when it comes to the things of God, we feel like, well, that's not, we don't need someone. And so here's my thing. Every person, and I think that part of the problem with that concept is we think that a minister somehow is, they like almost like the general feeling is that somehow ministers are more important than other people. And honestly, I don't think I've ever saw it that way. I know this, if you're a minister, you're going to answer, right? What you say, there's death and life in your words. And so, if you have a bad day as anything else, an electrician, someone's house might burn down. Then they get their insurance and they rebuild a house. If you have a bad day as a lawyer, maybe your client loses their case. If you have a bad day as a truck driver, you run your truck off the road or whatever. But if you have a bad day as a minister of the gospel and it costs someone their soul, you're going to answer for that. And so, in the, almost like in the immortal words of Spider-Man of Stan Lee, with much power comes much responsibility. Now that's a true statement in the kingdom. And I remember someone saying once, I said, do you think that you can be saved apart from a minister, apart from the word being preached to you? And, it kind of sometimes strikes people a little sideways. And I wish it wouldn't, but it does. And here's the thing. Whatever your role is in the kingdom, they're all equally important. They really are. There isn't this concept that, some people are less important and some are more important, or that's just not really. You know how Jesus said it? Jesus said, let the greatest among you be the servants of all. I remember a story my grandfather, my grandpa, Ralph, he pastored a church down in Waukegan, Illinois. And I remember a story I heard told about him. He was at a ministerial conference. And all the ministers are sitting around a really large table, and it was most of it was leadership from the district. And when the main part of the meal was done, and they were getting ready to serve dessert, I guess the ladies in the district had put on this really nice meal for the ministry. My grandfather got up and he started to clear the table with the ladies. He had his suit on. He went and he got an apron, and he got kind of rebuked or chastised by a lot of the ministry, telling him, Ralph, sit down, Brother Zerung, and the women will do this. In fact, some of the women were telling my grandfather to sit down. And my grandfather said to them quoted the Bible, where it says, let the greatest among you, and he was legitimately their leader in the district, be the servants of all. And so a minister isn't above. They're not up there and everyone else is down here. If you're a real minister of the gospel, your heart is to serve the people. And some of the greatest ministers I know, in fact, I have been very blessed to have some tremendous ministry. Pastor Mark and his wife, Sister Ginger Barnett. Of course, growing up with my grandfather and seeing how he did things. And I cannot forget Kenneth Fields. Kenneth Fields was a minister that I met while I was in the Seabees out in Port Hueneme, California. And every one of those ministers brought something into my life. And they added to me. Pastor Mark, he's an absolutely incredible Bible study teacher. Probably one of the best I've seen, and I've seen a lot of ministries. Kenneth Fields. Funny thing about Kenneth Fields, he would have a little paper, a little notebook, and Sunday morning while service was going on, he would sit there and you'd see him writing. Well, I didn't know for almost a year later what in the world he was doing. When I'd come back from the war, and I really wasn't firing on all 8 cylinders, he would come to the base and he would pick me up, and he pulled out his little paper, his little notebook, and it was what he was writing down was the names of the people that didn't show up on Sunday morning. If you were a regularly attending, and you didn't show up on Sunday, Monday or Tuesday of the following week, he was at your house. And he wasn't trying to harass you. He was genuinely concerned. In fact, something that I have shared in my messages is I was at his church when I first started going, and I was very used to ministers just kind of talking a big game, but that's all it was talk. And he came up, and my wife Sue and I were standing there, and he shook my hand and told me it was wonderful to have us there. And he said, "How are you doing?" And I said, "Well, not too bad for a guy who lives in a broke down shack with termites and paint peeling all over the place." And he smiled very warmly and said, "Well, that was so nice to see you here today." And I thought to myself, yeah, he didn't hear a word I said. The very next morning, there was a knock at my door at like 7 o'clock in the morning. And I looked at my wife and I was like, what in the world? I had already gone to muster and had come back home. So I was like, who in the world is knocking at my door 7 o'clock in the morning? So I opened the door, and it was Pastor Fields standing there in his bib overalls. Well, at the time, I didn't realize that he actually owned a pest control business, and he was having his guys spray my house. They'd already had been halfway done by the time he knocked on the door, and he had paint cans, and he had paint brushes and rollers and scrapers. And he said, "Time to get up, son. We got work to do." And that afternoon, that pastor and people from his church began painting my house. And I was blown away. To this day, I bet the men that came to help me, I bet they don't even remember doing it. But 30 years later, I'm still telling that story because it blew me away that this minister and his church cared about this veteran and his wife, who of course was pregnant with our oldest son at the time, was living in a shack with peeling paint and it just, but you know what? It wasn't just a minister doing the work. It was people that maybe thought they didn't matter, they weren't important. Well, all these years later, I'm still talking about what they did. But more importantly, you know, the Lord saw what they did. And those people that weren't ministers, they didn't get up behind a pulpit on Sunday morning and deliver messages. They probably might have thought that, you know, they really didn't matter, that they weren't that important. But to me, they were absolutely amazing. They were ministering to me in ways that a minister's never done. Now that leads me back to Heather. She, I suspect, has been hurt a lot. And so she's fairly guarded. But this is going to get to the point. My son and her have watched several of my videos and watched as the cameras jiggled all around and there wasn't proper lighting and all of that stuff, right? And so, without really any ado, she texted me and asked for my address, which I was like, okay, well, that's weird. So she got my address, and a few days later, a gift from her showed up at my house, and that gift was what you guys are experiencing today, a tripod. There's a tripod under my camera, and there's a light ring all the way around my camera, so I have perfect light and angles. And you know, she probably thought, oh, I'm just doing something nice, but in all reality, what she actually did was improve my capacity for ministry. And so what she probably didn't think about is the fact that going forward, if I ever am a blessing to you and you find my my little videos helpful in your walk, going forward, she'll actually be an active part of that ministry, because she literally saw a need and without being prompted, without anyone asking, she bought me a piece of equipment that is making my videos easier to watch. And she might think to herself that, like, it's not a big deal, you know, whatever. But that's what I'm talking about, is everyone has a role to play in the kingdom. And there's no big I's and little U's in the kingdom. It don't work that way. God doesn't roll like that. He's all about everyone working together as a family and being used of him to reach the lost before his return. And so I would say that she and my son, they played an important role And I'm very blessed to have people willing to be a part. You know, Apostolic Faith Church down in Pleasant Prairie, Wisconsin, they have some tremendous people in it. The last several months, my wife and I have been struggling financially. I mean, we've just been absolutely devastated with all of the surgeries and, you know, all the restrictions have been put on me. In fact, the doctor actually ruled that he considers me permanently disabled. And so it's been quite a blow to me and to my family. And so Apostolic Faith Church, the Light of Adel in Adel, Iowa, to Brother Eric Gender and his wife and their church they had down in Decatur, Illinois. Sister Lawana and her brother Steve and Sister Lawana's son Buddy. All of these people have just given and blessed my wife and I so tremendously. I can't even put it into words. I'll tell you this, if it wasn't for you all, I think my wife and I would have lost our house already. Because we did not have the money for the mortgage, the electric, the water, the sewer, for nothing. We were broke. But the family, they saw a need, and I didn't ask. They just did. They just blessed. And it's what it's all about. It's what it's all about. John and Janice Haggerty, I mean, my Lord, every time we come down to Pleasant Prairie, first off, they always open their house. They're like, hey, come over. Trixie, first off, she knows now that Pastor Jerry loves those turtles, so I get a big old giant bag of turtles. And then everyone wants to steal them from me. Brother Mark Flores and his wife, I mean, just blessed us. I could go on and on and on and on. I mean, so many people. Janice is never content to allow my wife and I to just stay in a normal room. She always puts us like in the nicest room she can get us. I mean, just little things that say, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. Everyone has been so kind to us. Brother Jeff, he lives down there in Kenosha. He goes to Apostolic Faith, and it frustrated me because one time he said to me that he didn't matter, or like that, he's just, just one person, and I couldn't disagree more. Every time I come there, man, he is so warm, him and his wife, so warm towards us, and always wants to give us a hug, and so very kind. Everyone matters in the kingdom. Everybody. And, Brother Antonio, man alive is that guy. He's a tremendous preacher. And Dan and his wife, Abby, I mean, when I think of those two of them, I think faithfulness. I mean, I know the enemy fights us and wants us to get frustrated and give up and give in, and you stick it out. You keep coming, you keep working. Tremendous tremendous. Everyone matters. You know, Brother Reggie and his wife, you know, when I see Reggie's wife worshiping the Lord, and I think about that, you know, in a small way, I had something to do with her coming to the church. All the way back when I was ministering to Santa, a friend of mine's mom, and then Santa invited Lolita to come, and I knew them before church, and it's just wonderful because all these years later, San Marzano, my wife really likes those tomatoes, San Marzano cherry or tomatoes, worshiping the Lord. And anyhow, I could go on and on and on and on. I mean, there's so many people at Apostolic Faith Church and at the Light of Adel, boy, they correct me because I say it wrong every time I say it. You know, Sister Davison out in there, she so graciously gets us a beautiful place to stay when we go to minister out there in Iowa. Like I said, I could go on and on all the time, but I want everyone to know there are no little people and big people in the kingdom. We're all part of a body working together to bring people to the Lord before he comes back. And everyone matters. Everyone matters. And so, please don't ever let the enemy make you feel as if you're insignificant in the kingdom. There are no insignificant people. Just like what I'm doing right now. You know? I'm sure if we were all going to be planted in a garden, we would all want to be the seed. But some of us would have to be the soil. Some of us would have to be, you know, the sunlight, the water, a trellis to hold up my green beans, because I love green beans. And everything plays a part. And so if you're going to get anything out of what I'm saying today, please. And another thing, because you make a mistake, maybe you've had to take a break from ministry for a little while just to kind of regroup. Don't take that as a negative. Take that as an opportunity to get where you need to be, so that when you get back at ministering, you'll be more effective than ever. So I appreciate everyone who checks out my little videos. I will get back onto my Bible study here in the next day or so. Thank you all so much. God bless. Bye-bye.